Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's willing to give up his position to achieve peace in Ukraine. His response to comments from President Trump. A New York flight bound for India makes an unscheduled landing in Rome due to an unspecified security threat, and a Delta flight turns back to LAX after smoke is detected on board. More on the latest Midair incidents. Head of DOGE Elon Musk telling all federal workers to report their work or otherwise resign, sending shockwaves through the federal workforce. California is asking the federal government for a huge amount of wildfire relief aid. The wildfires began last month and left a potentially unprecedented level of destruction. Voters in Germany headed to the polls today with conservatives projected to win. Why the right wing is gaining momentum.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Elon Musk is threatening federal employees' jobs as he asks them to list what work they have done in an email. Musk wrote in a post today saying people who are supposed to be working for the government are doing so little work, they are not checking their email at all, adding that in some cases, non-existent people or the identities of dead people are being used to collect paychecks. NTD's Don Ma has more.
Shockwaves through the federal workforce as employees grapple with the call to justify their jobs. Elon Musk gave federal employees an ultimatum on Saturday: explain what work they have done recently or resign. Musk has been tasked with shrinking the U.S. government by President Donald Trump. In a post on X, Musk said, consistent with President Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Shortly afterward, federal employees, including some judges, court staff, and federal prison officials, received a 3-line email with this instruction. Please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullets of what you have accomplished last week and CC your manager. Hundreds of thousands of employees were all given little more than 48 hours to report. The email to federal workers came from the Office of Personnel Management. The deadline to reply was listed as Monday at 11:59 p.m. But several agencies, including the FBI, the State Department, and the Department of Defense, advised staffers not to respond immediately. But other agencies, like NASA, are working on how employees should respond to the email. The U.S. Secret Service also instructed staff to comply. Trump posted a meme about the situation after federal workers began receiving email Saturday. The meme features SpongeBob SquarePants and reads, "Got done last week," followed by a list of 5 bullet points. Cried about Trump, cried about Elon, made it into the office for once, read some emails, cried about Trump and Elon some more. Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, an entity created by Trump, has swept across federal agencies, firing tens of thousands of federal government workers. Don Ma, NTD News.
The Trump administration said today it's eliminating 2,000 positions at USAID, and it's placing nearly all other staffers worldwide on leave. This is effective as of today at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. The administration said employees put on leave overseas can expect to receive voluntary agency-funded return travel and other benefits. At the same time, the agency said it is cutting the U.S.-based workforce by about 2,000 employees. This comes after a federal judge on Friday cleared the way for this by lifting a temporary restraining order. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed today that Israeli tanks moved into the West Bank for the first time since 2002.
In Judea and Samaria, West Bank, our forces are moving deep into the refugee camp. They destroy terrorist infrastructures, eliminate terrorists, and they will stay there as long as necessary. Yesterday, the Minister of Defense and I instructed our commanders to clear up the refugee camp in Kabbatia village in West Bank. For the first time in decades in Judea and Samaria, tanks have entered. This means one thing: we fight terrorism by all means and everywhere.
Netanyahu spoke at a graduation ceremony for combat officers. He said it means Israel will fight terrorism by all means and everywhere. Associated Press journalists saw a handful of tanks move Sunday into Jenin along a place of armed struggle against Israel, Israel launched the broad offensive in the north and west bank on January 21st, 2 days after the current ceasefire in Gaza took hold, and expanded it to nearby areas. Netanyahu said troops would remain in the West Bank as long as necessary. The Israeli defense minister said he and Netanyahu ordered the military to increase the intensity of the activity to thwart terrorism in the Tulkarem refugee camp and in all refugee camps in the West Bank. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's willing to give up his position to achieve peace in Ukraine. That's after President Trump noted Ukraine hasn't held presidential elections due to martial law.
If it's about peace in Ukraine and you really want me to leave my position, I am ready to do that in exchange for peace. Secondly, I can exchange it for NATO membership if there is such an opportunity.
He says U.S. troop deployment in Ukraine would make sense. That's if a mineral deal between the countries was treated as security guarantees. Zelensky says he wants to do a deal which offers guarantees for Ukraine in return. When the Treasury Secretary traveled to Kyiv recently, Ukraine didn't accept the American deal. Zelensky said it didn't offer enough in return.
My relationship with President Trump, it never was in such best way.
We're going to stay on the topic of Zelensky and the Russia-Ukraine war. Let's bring on retired Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, a geopolitical strategist and former battalion commander. Colonel, good evening.
Hey, good evening. Good to see you.
I want to first get your take on that soundbite we just heard from Zelensky. So he's now saying that he's willing to step down in exchange for peace or Ukraine getting into NATO. What does that tell you about where Zelensky stands right now?
Well, I think he's recognizing the fact that he needs to move even a little bit from where he was before, because right now he's not even invited to the table yet. So he's recognizing that, seeing that he has to put something out there to say that he's willing to make a move in order to achieve peace for Ukraine. Now, it's unfortunate that he thinks it also needs to be tied to NATO membership, and the fact that he did cancel elections and then many don't even consider him to be president, and he can't step down from something he's not really anyway. So, and the last thing would be the fact that he's fighting against the Trump administration, the United States in general, so much right now, despite all of our support. Any deal we put on the table, for the most part, he should be eager to sign because of how much money we've invested in their nation already.
I want to talk about what Secretary of State Marco Rubio mentioned about last week's meeting in Riyadh. He said Russia and the U.S. discussed 3 goals: restoring staff at the embassies in Washington and Moscow, building a high-level team for the Ukraine peace talks, and looking at developing closer relations. It seems the Trump administration is preparing to build a long-term relationship with Russia.
Yeah, and why not try? After all, I mean, we all know the history here. We know Russia invaded Ukraine. There's a lot more history to that, though, that people should very much be aware of. But if there's the ability to actually bring Russia and the United States back together in some form of at least a friendly relationship of any kind versus the adversarial one we have now, potentially even peel them away a little bit from China, we should do so. And we can't fail to talk to Russia just because we know what has happened with Ukraine in this specific invasion. Because to do so is to continue this war forever, it seems like, and to continue the killing. There's no plan, there's no strategy, there's no desire to end it, it seems. So sitting down and talking, this looks like Yalta, World War II. This looks like Reagan and Gorbachev meeting in Reykjavik, Iceland. We shouldn't take this off the table. Let's see where this goes. It could actually result in something at least better than what we have now, if not something even really good.
And intriguingly, you mentioned China, controlled by the Chinese Communist Party there in this dynamic just now, Colonel. Now, Russia and the Chinese Communist Party declared a loose alliance in the early stages of the Russia-Ukraine war. Over the decades, the Western world has alienated Russia, arguably pushing it closer to the CCP. Is Trump playing a long game here to ultimately pull Russia closer to the U.S. and isolate the Chinese regime?
He could very well be, and it's a very good start to doing that if that is his aim. It took a long time for us to essentially humiliate and isolate Russia after the Soviet Union collapsed and many of the actions we took as the United States and NATO in general to expand NATO eastward and then bomb the Serbians, engage in conflict in the Balkans like that, and show that NATO could be an offensive force, left Russia wondering truly whether or not NATO was only defensive and whether or not it would ever stop its expansion up to its borders. You can't blame them for reacting negatively to that. If we can kind of come back from that, even though you can't unwind the clock on expanding NATO, maybe two leaders together, Russia and the United States, can get together and pull Russia more towards the Western sphere where Russia frankly wanted to be for years. And as a result of that, it can be good for virtually everybody and really put notice on China that that already frailing friendship is going to continue to degrade over time.
Certainly, a stronger Russia-U.S. relations could represent easing of tensions worldwide, a more secure situation worldwide. Trump said a second round of ceasefire talks will begin on Tuesday. Do you expect any major advancements to come out of that?
Anything's possible. And the way these negotiations work is you go down there with things that you know you're never going to give up. You have the things that you're willing to give up first and quickest, and then everything else in between becomes what you're really fighting over on the exchange back and forth. This is really just the art of the deal done in Saudi Arabia, and it could lead to potentially a call to European counterparts to include Zelensky as well and say, hey, listen, I think we have the ability to move forward from here because Russia and the United States have paved the way forward for them and said, okay, we think it's worth the investment now to bring more people into this and move forward. I hope we can see something like that happen because we know most of the factors that are involved in this. There are some very good plans out there for how to achieve this peace. And frankly, the talks have been going on for more than 2 months now. I think we're ready to see something big move.
And finally, Colonel, as a geopolitical strategist, what would you be advising the president's team right now to do?
Well, I think the first thing we need to make sure that we do is they've already done, which is talk to Russia one-on-one. Don't have anybody else really in the room. Be able to speak with them, frankly, regardless of the entire situation. Start with that. And then we know that NATO is a red line that Russia just will not tolerate with Ukraine. And frankly, Ukraine doesn't even qualify to be part of NATO anyways. So just take that off the table no matter what. Once you do that, suddenly you've got a much more pliable and willing to talk Russia than you did before, because Biden never took it off the table and many other U.S. presidents never took NATO off the table either. We start with that. Everything else becomes a process of barter and exchange, whether it be land or mineral rights, different kinds of access, sizes of military. Then you can break into that. But get the big one off the table right away and then expand it to more nations like Ukraine and our European counterparts.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Have a good night.
The Pope's condition still critical. His doctors say his health outcome is unpredictable. Here's more.
Pope Francis remains in critical condition, according to Vatican News. It says the outcome of his health is unpredictable at this time.
Con questo forte raffreddore.
Francis was hospitalized in Rome's Gemelli Hospital on February the 14th for double pneumonia, a serious condition where both lungs are infected, making it difficult to breathe.
We are students from India and Brazil, and we came here to pray for Pope Francis.
People gathered outside the hospital wishing the Pope well.
We believe that love always triumphs together with humility and with the heart, like our sunglasses today.
Pilgrims in nearby Assisi also praying.
From Chicago, there's over 20 of us. So every morning we are praying for Pope Francis's health.
Followers of Roman Catholicism worldwide will be awaiting further news.
In Germany today, conservatives won the national election. The right-leaning Alternative for Germany is expected to come in second place with record gains.
We need to end illegal migration into Germany after 10 years of a big city actually every year coming into Germany. We are over the limit of what's possible.
Germany held general elections on Sunday. The Conservative Party CDU/CSU got the most votes, while the right-leaning Alternative for Germany, or AfD, came in second. The party has been gaining momentum over the past few years.
We have gained 100%, and that is something you have to even achieve in the first place. And you did this. Our supporters, our members, our volunteers did this. You were sensational.
Issues such as illegal immigration have become a big topic in Europe in recent years. According to an AfD official, the number of immigrants coming into Germany every year amounts to the population of a big city, and that's been happening for the past 10 years.
Germany has big problems. We need growth. We need to end illegal migration. That's what the next few days will be about.
The current government, the Social Democrats, or SPD, are expected to come in third. Politicians in Germany now have to build a government. Any coalition has to have more than 50% of the total votes.
Up next, a New York flight bound for India makes an unscheduled landing in Rome due to an unspecified security threat. An Delta flight turns back to LAX after smoke is detected on board. More on the latest Midair incidents. OpenAI has banned some Chinese users for using the service to make a social media surveillance tool. The principal investigator said this was the first time the company had uncovered an AI tool of this kind.
This past year has been one of the hardest in MyPillow's history. It's because of you that we're making it through. My employees and I want to thank you for your continued support by extending our wholesale prices on classic MyPillows. Get standard classic MyPillows only $14.98. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.98. But it gets even better. Upgrade to a queen size MyPillow for just $18.98. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows $29.98 and multi-use MyPillows for only $9.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of these wholesale prices, including my standard size MyPillow, originally $49.98, now only $14.98. Queens $18.98, Kings only $1 more. Not only that, order $75 or more, ship absolutely free. From all of us here at MyPillow, thanks America!
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I overdosed on heroin and I lived. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I found the fatherhood program, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. My desire to change had finally outweighed my desire to stay the same. I felt powerless for so much of my life that it's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. For the first time, I finally feel like I'm exactly where I should be, where I want to be.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person, and I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. You won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, and being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
Two more mid-air mishaps over the weekend. A flight from New York to New Delhi, India was diverted to Rome this afternoon due to an unspecified security concern. The plane landed safely at Leonardo da Vinci International Airport. Authorities said the safety threat was a non-credible, but they haven't confirmed yet what the security concern was. Law enforcement in Rome inspected and cleared the aircraft to redepart. It will stay overnight in Rome before continuing to Delhi tomorrow. The flight, operated by American Airlines, had taken off from John F. Kennedy International Airport. It was carrying around 200 people. Last night, an Australian-bound Delta flight departing from Los Angeles also experienced trouble. It had to return to LAX less than an hour after takeoff, after smoke was detected in the plane. That plane landed safely as well. Authorities are now investigating. And early this morning, Beijing time, a Singapore-bound Scoot flight took a detour about 20 minutes after leaving an airport in central China, citing technical issues. So far, no injuries have been reported. Some internet users posted on Chinese TikTok sharing their experience on the flight.
One internet user posted on social media platform Douyin, China's version of TikTok, that they saw the engine emitting sparks like a rocket during takeoff. Some said there was a strong smell of fuel after the flight returned to the original airport. Other internet users who said they were on the same flight echoed these comments and said they felt threatened by the situation. Their comments were reported by multiple Chinese media outlets. The flight has now been rescheduled for Monday local time. In response to media inquiries, Scoot said the decision to reschedule the flight was made due to technical issues, but denied there was an engine fire. Scoot Flight is a low-cost airline under Singapore Airlines. Flora Hua, NTD News.
OpenAI has banned several accounts, likely of China origin, with activity focused on developing an AI social media surveillance tool. One part of the cluster of users used ChatGPT to generate short to medium-length comments about Chinese dissident organizations, and notably the spiritual group Falun Gong. NTD's Sean Marshall has more details.
OpenAI banned a cluster of Chinese language-linked ChatGPT accounts after finding descriptions of tools for monitoring social media activity to be powered by non-OpenAI models. One of this operation's main activities was generating detailed descriptions consistent with sales pitches for what they described as the Qianyu Overseas Public Opinion AI Assistant. Another focus was a workstream using ChatGPT to generate short to medium-length comments about Chinese dissident organizations, notably the spiritual meditation practice Falun Gong, and to generate comments about U.S. policies and politics, as well as researching political actors and topics. Occasionally, the actors asked the model to assume the persona of an English speaker called Thompson. OpenAI was not able to identify these comments posted online. The report also mentioned a social media listening tool that they claimed to have used to feed real-time reports about protests in the West to Chinese security services. The clusters of users were also using the service to assist with analyzing documents and editing and debugging code for those tools. The OpenAI report said this network consisted of ChatGPT accounts that operated in a time pattern consistent with mainland Chinese business hours, prompted our models in Chinese, and used our tools with a volume and variety consistent with manual prompting rather than automation. The principal investigator said this was the first time the company had uncovered an AI tool of this kind. In publicly sharing these cases, OpenAI said it aims to highlight how authoritarian regimes are trying to leverage U.S.-built AI against the U.S. and its allies, as well as their own citizens. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
California Governor Gavin Newsom asked Congress to approve nearly $40 billion to help the Los Angeles area recover from January's wildfires.
He said the fires could become the costliest natural disaster in U.S. history when everything is tallied. Newsom sent a letter Friday asking for support from lawmakers. In a post on social media platform X, Newsom said it will take an all-hands-on-deck approach to rebuild from the devastating fires in L.A. Estimates of the total economic loss surpassed $250 billion. The Los Angeles Times reported real estate losses from the Palisades and Eaton fires may top $30 billion alone. More than 16,000 structures were destroyed as flames ripped through the Pacific Palisades, Malibu, Pasadena, and Altadena. Newsom vowed the funding would be used to rebuild homes, infrastructure, businesses, schools, churches, and healthcare facilities, and to support people affected by the fires. Newsom thanked President Trump for fast-tracking debris removal. Trump has frequently criticized both Newsom and his state for their water policies, alleging they contributed to January's out-of-control wildfires in Southern California. Trump's envoy for special missions, Rick Grinnell, said Friday there will be conditions to any federal aid for the state. One being discussed was defunding the California Coastal Commission. Trump says the agency is overly restrictive, bureaucratic, and a hindrance to timely rebuilding efforts.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm Brendan Fallon. Good night.